We're live. Hey, welcome, Nikki Johnson.
Thank you, Evelina.
Yes, thank you so much for coming back. Our last conversation was so interesting and exciting that I wanted to keep the dialogue rolling. So, do you want to do a quick little introduction of yourself again?
Sure. Okay. So, yes, I'm Nikki Johnson. I'm currently writing a book called The Internal Process of Enlightenment, Bridging Spirituality and Science. Talks about the process that takes place within the human body to trigger the subjective feelings and experiences that so many different philosophical, psychological, and spiritual traditions associate with enlightenment, with its many names. So, but yeah. I'm a discussion leader and a guest speaker in many different places too. So yeah, and
The woman that wears many hats, and that's why you're the perfect person to talk to at a time like this. I'm grateful to be talking to you because you always have very enlightening ideas, and it makes me feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So, can share with us your ideas. You have. We wanted to talk a little bit more about this idea of dimensions, and I know we've thrown a bunch of ideas out there. So, tell me where you want to take us.
Yeah, well, I thought we were gonna focus on the simulation theory
Yes,
this time.
I've been really wanting to talk about that. Yes, thank you. Yeah, because I found for me, discovering this, well, it makes more sense the more I learned about computers. Obviously, the more you kind of understand about computer science, the more that whole concept makes sense. But also, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about specifically about that, and then you take us wherever. But is that sometimes I have a hard time reconciling. It's when I work with artists and I'm trying to teach this idea of like empowering their voices and their feelings and going in the direction they want to go. And it's a fine line, I feel like, when we're talking about simulation theory, between kind of empowerment and selfishness and using it to kind of in a negative way. So let that be your launch pad.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Right. So simulation theory is the somewhat radical idea that we may be living in a simulation currently.
Yeah.
Like, what? How? Where would you even come up with this idea? Well, okay. Here's where it comes from in terms of the base reasoning. Okay, so we look at the physical reality and we see that so many of these things kind of there's mathematics built into it. You look at pi as relating to circles. There's sine and cosine. There's so much math there. We look at physical laws and the way that so many things can be described. And once you come up with that law, then you can do experiments, and they are very predictive in terms of what happens then. Okay, so people look at all of this and they say, okay, well, it almost seems as though this reality, if you had a sufficiently advanced computer, that potentially this thing is programmable. Now this computer would obviously have to be light years ahead of what we have right now, but at the same time, for many people, seems potentially conceivable. Okay?
And with the rate of like AI.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So
and really quickly, I was going to say too, fractals.
Yes.
Fractals in nature is another one of these like repeating themes.
For sure. Sure. Yeah, and we'll get to that too.
Okay.
So, yeah, the other side of the sort of base reasoning on where this thing came from is exactly what you said. So the rate of advancement. So you look at Moore's law. Have you ever listened to anything that Peter Diamandis has put on YouTube? Like, he's great, founder of Singularity University and X Prize. So the way he talks about Moore's law, it's really good. Cool. So basically, this guy Gordon Moore in 1965, he was looking at just the rate of advancement for transistors in an integrated circuit. However, this law that he came up with, that it doubles every 2 years, in terms of sophistication. This law randomly, and this kind of applies to that first point that we were talking about, where these laws exist out there and why. Okay, but yeah, this applies to so many different aspects of technology. So in terms of memory capacity and computational power, and even the pixels and digital cameras. Okay, it doubles every 2 years, so it's an exponential curve. And the way Peter Diamandis explains it, at first you think, oh, okay, doubling, whatever, 2, 4, 6, 8, 16, 32. Okay, yeah, but you know what? In 30 steps, it's a billion. That's 26 laps around the Earth in 30 steps. So, the curve is like this, right? Okay, so if you think about that, where we are right now and where we've come in a fairly short time, where think back to Pong, right? And where we are now with virtual and augmented reality.
Right. It really happened in the last 40 years.
Exactly. And
well,
so
where Bostrom and all that? Sorry, where is Bostrom? Is that his name?
Nick Bostrom. Yeah, we are so in sync.
I know.
You're always right.
Oh, wait, wasn't oh, you're getting to it. Okay, all right. I'll let you get to it.
Yeah. So, philosopher named Nick Bostrom in 2003, he wrote a very formal.
2003?
Yes.
Oh, I thought he was from the 50s. Okay, so
no, he's very
recent.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay.
And actually, really good. So Joe Rogan, he was on his show talking about this. We can put that in the links in the description or whatever. It's a good. It makes it accessible to people the way he describes it there. Cool. But basically, so he wrote this very formal logical argument with exactly this, and it was called "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" Right. And so basically, he laid out 3 possibilities, and he says there are only 3. The first one, civilizations go extinct before they reach that level where they can create these types of simulations. Okay, so something, the asteroid or World War V or whatever it is, wipes out the entire population and game over.
Right.
Okay. Second possibility is that civilizations, when they reach this point where they just lose interest in it for whatever reason. Right. Maybe they just, we're working on other stuff, or, maybe there's ethical concerns about doing it, but I don't know. I mean, the way we've created SimCity seems fairly unlikely. If you reach that level, why wouldn't you? Okay.
Right.
And so the third possibility is we are living in a computer simulation right now, which sounds insane, but at the same time, how do we, let's pose it as a question. So how do you know that you're not? Weird.
Yeah.
Weird and wild, but that's where we are.
Right.
Now personally, and this is discussed very seriously, and Elon Musk, for one, is a serious proponent of this. He thinks, honestly, that there's a 1 in billion chance that we're living in base reality, as he says. So in other words, there's a 1 in billion chance that we are not living in a simulation. That is his belief. Okay.
Right.
So now personally, for me, and I would suspect, knowing you, that you probably feel similar to this. When I heard this, of course, the first time you're like, what? But then for me, it's like, wow. You know what? This does align with so many spiritual and philosophic traditions, which have told us for centuries, and these, groups are coming from very different places on the planet and very different times in history. So many of these groups are saying, you know what? The reality that we think is reality is actually an illusion. It's Maya.
Right.
Right.
The part that pushed me over it was quantum physics.
Yes.
Sure. Because quantum physics basically proves, and that's the whole double particle thing.
The double slit experiment?
Well, the double slit experiment, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Also the entangled particles.
Okay.
Right? Where you can throw one into another country and it will react so fast that the only way it's connected so fast is the way that a computer works, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And wave particle duality as well.
Right.
So the result of an experiment is based upon whether or not someone is observing it. Like, what?
Yeah.
If there's just one form of reality, if life is as simple as we are taught to believe in school, where no, there's one form, then how can you have results like that? It really opens your mind to, okay, there's a lot more to reality here than we're initially taught, and let's dig down the rabbit holes and like figure it out for sure.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, for me, hearing it, I was like, wow, okay, this simulation argument is potentially, a scientific way of expressing that same sort of concept that this base reality or whatever, this 3D plane, or 3D 4D, however you want to define it, is an illusion of some sort. And a lot of the people that kind of gravitate toward this particular interpretation or way of expressing the same concept, a lot of these people are coming from the opposite of a spiritual perspective, so it's kind of the atheist way of
Right.
expressing the
Right.
same idea.
Right. Which
And
is ironic.
just in general, beyond this particular issue, for me, when I see that an idea, a concept, is coming from people from very, very different perspectives. So again, from very different places on the planet, from very different time periods, from very different academic backgrounds, it's like, okay, there
And
may be something to that.
yeah,
Go
and they're
ahead.
saying like the same thing, but in different terms. Like for instance, the holographic universe is another way of saying the simulation theory or the matrix. And not everybody compares it to a computer program. They use different languages, I think, but they're
Right.
all kind of saying the same thing. That's again what made it align for me, was that, like you said, so many people are saying it in different ways, but it helps. I think the shorthand actually is simulation theory. So of all the branches that it goes off into, as far as like a holographic universe, is concerned.
That's on here too. Yeah.
Simulation seems to me like, and comparing it to a computer program seems to me like the gateway for people in our age, because we're starting to understand the way computers work.
Yes, for sure. Cool.
Like the
Yeah, and then for me as well, just so many different models of the universe come back to this idea of projection somehow. So you think about Plato and the allegory of the cave, that somehow this world that the prisoners in 3D, 4D reality are living in, it's actually just a projection from a higher plane of some sort. Okay, that's what he was and that idea is age old now, right? Exactly these things are consistent, and like
really
something so counterintuitive. How is this weird idea popping up again and again? It's again going back to that idea of, okay, I'm seeing this idea pop up in different places, coming from completely different angles. I may not agree with it initially, but I'm going to leave it open, like we were talking about last time. I'm going to leave it open, and I'm going to watch where the evidence stacks up. And there's so much evidence for this completely counterintuitive idea. It's very strange. Okay.
Well, that's where
anyway, and then so the next thing on my list, similar to that, would be the Cartesian theater. This idea of we just take this data that comes in from the senses, we put it together, and that becomes what we perceive as reality as individuals, this sensory data. Okay. Also a form of projection as reality. Okay. But then we get to more modern theories, like you mentioned, with the holographic universe, where again, this idea, and they were initially studying how math works within black holes, but then they realized, wow, this actually applies more generally. And so people like Leonard Susskind, who's I believe a professor at Stanford University, and a bunch of other guys, I can't remember the name of the guy offhand, but said, okay, it appears that we may be just these same thing that Plato was talking about, where we may, in fact, on this plane of consciousness, be these sort of almost flatlander type shadow projections from a different dimensional reality. And have you ever seen the quantum gravity, what is reality, and hacking reality videos? We'll have to put
Probably,
those
because
in the
I've seen a lot of the quantum physics. The quantum
Okay.
physics stuff for me is where all this starts to make sense.
Quantum gravity is the name of a particular team that is working on a theory of everything.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah. But anyway, so and their theory of everything they call emergence theory. But basically, the fundamental particle that they see at the, just the element that creates our universe is this 8D crystal, which projects as a 4D quasi crystal, which then again projects into 3D as, what we see as objects. Okay?
And where do we fall in that? Like the human brain, I guess.
So we are in that flatland universe where we're seeing the 3D form of that. Okay.
So we're between
but it actually,
the 3D and the.
So we're too removed from this object that they have defined through math.
Okay.
And it's made up of, I think, tetrahedrons. So it comes back to Platonic solids as well. That this, creates this 8D crystal, which projects as a 4D quasi crystal, which then projects into the reality that you and I take. That shadow projection. That would be two steps removed from it. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So anyway, but and then I think this also works pretty well with the idea of the multiverse as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The idea that all of these possibilities exist. And again, you think about I've heard this analogy used with the multiverse, where it's kind of like a video game where all of that content exists on that disc or whatever, all of those possibilities are there. And at any given time, you play out a particular scene, but all of that stuff is there in existence
the field of
simultaneously. Yeah, which makes it possible for past, present, and future to exist simultaneously.
Exactly. And that's where, we kind of fall. I think we fall into it. So the way I've kind of heard it explained is like, if you go back to the quantum, the particle double slit experiment or whatever, there's a field of possibilities. Anything is possible, but it's our perception. And so this is where too, I think the body or the brain, the human brain as a conduit or some form of filter, it fits into this progression somewhere, because through that we give it form.
Yes.
Because what exists is the field of possibility. There is only possibility, and we are the ones who are turning it into reality.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Something like that. That's all in there. Yeah. But I don't know exactly where in the chain, as far as like multiverses, the human form exists, like flesh.
I think, in terms of the multiverse, I see it as timelines, all different timelines, right? And so, you can kind of navigate based on your intention. Any given choice point, it breaks off into, that split. And so, just imagine the the infinity of choice points there, and just that branching out into
Right. So. And are we the one, like, would you say that because to connect it in my mind, if there only exists this like possibility, are we who, if you will, but who's that? Maybe that's too big of a question, but like what gives, what is the projectile that gives it form? Do you know what I mean?
How can we observe anything?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think.
Like,
gotcha.
What kind? Yeah, exactly.
So
actually,
I think individual souls, decide, okay, yeah, I want to do that environment. I want to play that game. I want to do that simulation. We dive in, and again, like we were talking about last time with the pre-birth plans or whatever, you decide on another level, okay, here are the things that I would like to explore in that environment, and then you are taken down that journey.
Cool.
And the timelines are already there. So
right.
you have these conscious intentions that you know about while you're in. Now, most of your memory is gone when you enter into here, and you awaken to that progressively. If that's what you're focused on. You can certainly not focus on that at all. And come in with just a very limited intelligence. But if you're on the spiritual path or the philosophical path,
but
routes that
we are of that same substance. It's all one substance. That's what's so mind-boggling. But so go on.
Yes. So anyway, and I think that's what you use to steer then down these different timelines. So based on what you wanted to experience, and then your intention at any given point. And I personally believe that your consciousness splits, and it goes infinitely larger, infinitely smaller. And so you have a level up where you're helping to guide yourself, with infinite kind of adjustment bureau type thing, the guys in the hats or whatever, like helping to nudge things, right? So that's one level up. Then you have another level where you've designed it. Then you have another level, infinitely more. Oh yeah.
Is that aligned with the dimensions?
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Cool.
Those are the dimensions. Those are
fascinating.
the yes.
Okay, interesting. In levels of consciousness. I love that.
Yeah. But then, okay, so going back to my like another sort of reason that gives me pause on this thing, and for me kind of serves as a certain amount of evidence that, okay, yeah, this may have some credibility, is just these weird mathematical anomalies that we have. So, for example, light speed as the speed limit, and just the math that comes out of the whole theory of relativity that you can, all of that stuff that Einstein worked on. Why is light speed the speed limit for our universe? If you really think, why would you do that? But okay, if this is a computer simulation, okay, all right, I see. It's not infinity. You have certain limits then.
Right. It's programmed.
Exactly.
But it also means that it can be programmed differently because out of this field of possibilities, right? So then, like, who
have you seen? By the way, have you seen the show Undone?
No.
It's on Amazon Prime. Oh my God, it's so good.
Okay.
But there is an episode in that where they're talking about, so pretend that the entire universe is this set of blocks here.
Right.
Okay. Now you're looking at it from above the blocks, but when you're in the blocks, you think the blocks are the
real.
entire world. Exactly. Yeah, it's that sort of argument. And that has been made in many different ways, but that show is really good.
Okay,
so,
cool.
But anyway, but also other mathematical anomalies. So this pixelation factor, and they talk about it in those quantum gravity films, but basically Planck length and Planck time, these are the smallest units of length and time that you can have. So it's like pixels, like you can't go any smaller. Same sort of idea as light speed as the speed limit.
Right.
Why would there be a limit? Why wouldn't it be infinitely whatever? Okay, all right. If you have this environment that you're creating within, okay, I can see how. All right, yeah, this is the structure of the simulation,
Okay,
and that's the reason for that. But then you also have other things like the Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio, and why that appears in so many different places in nature, and also in trading. it shows up and things like, and even like we were talking about before with Moore's law, why does that thing keep popping up in terms of growth rate? Why do we see that pattern? It's really weird. Yeah. So
And it's strictly mathematical. That's why it feels simulation-y, computer-y.
Yeah.
It's math.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
So, but then you also look at the transhumanist agenda. Have you looked into transhumanism at all?
No.
So this is seriously happening right now.
Yeah.
So you got big corporations like Google and Apple and all the big transnationals or whatever starting to work on this transhumanist agenda where they're coming up with ways to merge technology with the human body. And so Elon Musk again, so Neuralink, have you heard of this, where implanted chips within the brain to augment mental capacity, and initially they're just going to offer it to people who have some sort of disability. Okay. But I can see it very quickly turning into, well, wow, that guy who was formerly disabled, now he has all of these mental abilities that are way beyond what we have, this plane. Okay, let's sell it, try and sell it to the rest of the population. Okay.
Yeah, that's how we can keep up with all the updates.
Yeah,
on our phones.
Yeah, this is literally happening now. They are aiming to have a human trial next year.
Wow.
I know.
That's so scary. And so many people don't know this. That's what blows my mind. So many people still don't even know what simulation theory means. That's also what's so scary about this, or how a computer works.
I know.
And a lot of people hate it. But at the same time, it's like you can't fight it. This is also why I say you can't fight it, because it's coming into us, literally. It's merging with us. So it pays to know a little bit about it.
Yeah,
it's like our responsibility. So go on.
Yeah. But we're so distracted.
Right.
Stay in fear about all this stuff.
Exactly.
Stay focused on material reality. You need to make money. Don't focus on these other things that don't necessarily have commercial potential or whatever. Yeah, we're steered away from those things. You have to make a conscious choice that, no, this is important to me, and go in that direction.
Or you have to watch our discussions, because
exactly. Nice. So but then step beyond Neuralink, which is happening right now, there have been discussions about what is called whole brain emulation. So the idea of eventually being able to upload your consciousness into a computer, okay?
I've heard about that.
Yeah. So and potentially it becomes a whole environment where we're all logged into, this sort of virtual reality world, because, they're even saying right now, oh, why would you want to stay in a human body that is subject to disease, and as we see right now, and all
you live
of these
beyond,
things.
It's life beyond life. For your kids and your grandkids.
Exactly.
They can
sell you on this reality of this technical world that you enter. Okay.
Which really quickly, just to tie that back into simulation theory, is like this is happening now anyway. So who's to say that we're not already there?
I know.
This is the next version. Yeah. Crazy.
This is in the works.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I would definitely recommend the work of William Henry. He's a scholar, but he's also been on like Ancient Aliens as well. But he's done amazing work in terms of looking at so many different traditions, with specific focus, I think, on Buddhist and Egyptian in particular. The Buddhist rainbow body, and then what the Egyptians believed as well in terms of the latent capabilities of the enlightened human, and what is possible when you turn on additional, you look at right now, 90% of our DNA is supposedly junk DNA. Give me a break. Okay. They just don't know what it does.
Right.
But these are potentially multi-dimensional abilities that we just haven't turned on yet. Right. And so the next step for humanity is going through the process that we talked about in our last episode. And the thing that the book is about, you know, going through this where process starts in the brain, goes down the spine, if everything is aligned, goes back into the brain, releases the neurotransmitters, turns on other parts, you know, what we associate with enlightenment. And that's just to 5D. And then it goes infinitely beyond that, you know. But anyway, so yeah.
And we have time to do that right now because we're all locked down.
Right. So in terms of the transhumanist agenda, they're saying, oh, you know, look at the limitations of the human body. Yeah, the human body in caterpillar form, right? But
right.
we're aiming for butterfly, right? There's so much more. So many of these traditions talk about the Merkaba and the increased capacity, you know, accessing the superconscious mind and all of the abilities that come with that in terms of telepathy and, you know, clairaudient, you know, like starting to turn more and more of that stuff on, even like telekinesis and like levitation and just like weird, like superpower type things, right? And starting to, not all at once, obviously, but starting to turn more and more of that stuff on as you raise your vibration through this. Yeah. So anyway, but
we're at half an hour, just so you know.
Oh, shoot.
I know. We're so fast. I know, but we can continue the conversation, obviously. Oh, we have questions. Oh my gosh, I didn't even notice. Oh, they're not questions. They're just saying, yes, 21st Renaissance is being conceived right now.
Seriously.
Yeah. But anyways, I was just going to say that this is also to tie it into what's happening. This is, I think, part of this awakening that we are having. It is, and part of being forced into our homes and away from commerce and away from being plugged in 21st century Renaissance. Yeah. But anyways, it's part of we're being asked to like unplug from commercial everything, but also plug into each other.
Yes.
Which I think is starting to happen. And this is part of, I would like to think, a larger awakening that we're starting to happen, that is starting to happen so that we can tap into what is already inside of us before we start getting people telling us we need computer chips in our brains, which I'm sure is great and wonderful and can do cool things, but why not explore and awaken to what's already in here first?
Exactly. Right? That is the argument, right? Yeah. And I understand the benefits that are being presented, but just think about, okay, there are latent capabilities within the human body that we haven't even touched yet. Exactly. We haven't even scratched the surface. 98% of our DNA, we know what it does.
Word.
Or 98% we don't. 2% we do.
Right.
Okay, that's where we are right now on the scale of what is possible, which is a really mind-blowing idea. Yeah. And I was just going to say too. So Jesus in the Bible, metaphorically, is talking about, well, heaven is within you and all around you. What was he talking about? He's talking about DNA. Okay, which is within us, and that's what programs it. Yeah. So, and I think too, in terms of the simulation argument, so this idea that is out there of creating your own reality. Well, how is that possible? I found, you know, and reading that idea again from all of these different sources, spiritually, philosophically, psychologically, right? Okay, the model that works for me, kind of looking at all of these things that are said, is this idea that reality is almost like a multiplayer video game where the code is the DNA, gets filtered through our psyche, you know, is projected for us as reality individually. Okay. And initially we think, oh, everybody's got the same. But as you go on, as you raise your vibration, you have the ability to customize, like in increasing amounts, right? And it sounds like a crazy idea, but we have models that actually show us this in physical form. And I will give you 2 examples. So looking at Google and the evolution of that search engine. So in the beginning, everybody was seeing the same results, right? So I was a SEO copywriter, so like helping websites show up in the results. In the beginning, when it first started, you know, you could say, you're number 3 this week. Well, then as time went on, Google was adjusting it and using much more sophisticated algorithms increasingly over time, where, yeah, they're personalizing results based on that person's user history and their geography and like all this stuff, right? And now you can have very, very different results. So, yeah.
Right.
And then the other thing too is, I don't know if you've heard of Hedera hash graph. So this is basically like one step beyond blockchain. And this may eventually become like Internet 2.0 for us, where right now, the structure of the internet is there's one centralized authority that we all plug into. And then, you know, yeah, we can have some changes in the same way that you might use a different browser, which, you know, shows features in a different way. But we all basically have the same sort of reality. Well, this hash graph, which may end up becoming the next framework for Internet 2.0, whatever that looks like and whenever that's rolled out. I mean, it's more, there are individual nodes. You share the code of what that formally centralized authority would look like. You share that, but you got your own little node. You got your own little world. And so, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah,
for
that's
sure,
very cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
So creating your own reality, you know.
Yeah, I dig it. I dig it. Okay. We have so much to talk about.
Yes.
It's hard to be short.
True.
But yeah, there's also all kinds of, you know, ethical and these other kinds of things. I like that you kind of touched on blockchain. That opens up a whole nother, we could do a whole thing on blockchain. But I think we should wrap up.
Well, I have two more points.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to shoot them through us really fast?
Yes. Okay. So I would definitely recommend that people watch. Have you seen the Upriser We Are From the Future video ever? Yeah.
So.
It's really cool. So basically, you know, they it's presented as this is a message from the future. They're using that as a literary device, but basically it kind of presents the idea of a post-ascension or post-singularity world where let's project into the future where everybody does have the ability to instantly manifest whatever they want. And the point that they make in that video is, well, okay, if you have a world where you just give people that ability, dude, if we have selfish desires, dude, that's going to turn into chaos, right?
Right.
So
that's what I started with. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is presented there that, okay, maybe we created this simulation as a training ground where we learn to filter that stuff out. We learn to align personal free will with the divine will, if you will. We learn to develop moral responsibility. We learn and we realize that, okay, it's in my best interest to act in the best interest of others as well.
Right, exactly. And that's also the law
of karma. Yeah.
Law of karma, law of attraction. We're definitely touching on that. Yeah. And that's also, by the way, like Buddhism and all that. So there's a lot of similarities.
Exactly. And then one of the other points that I was just going to make is just, okay, all right, so let's assume that we do live in a simulation. Well, how should life be different? But then you look at people like Elon Musk, who totally believes that, but he's still doing his thing, you know? And that's the idea. Still live your life and play the game, you know?
Right.
But
well, he's pissed off a lot of people, but yeah. Okay.
But that's a whole nother episode as well. But at the same time, you know that it's a game too, and that kind of shifts priorities as well. Yeah.
Right, and that's how I use it, because it's like, just know that it's not real. You know, you don't have to like worry so much.
Yeah. And for me as well, definitely. And I know this is just evidence that is super solid for me. I couldn't expect anyone to change their beliefs based on what has happened to me. But for me, and why I believe that there is clearly a force that has come into my life and has taken me off of this purely materialistic path and said, no, there's something else that's more important. Pay attention to this. Steer the ship over here to a longer term goal. And it's kind of shifted me toward, okay, no, the goal here is have the greatest impact that you can on the earth, you know, and these more cosmic goals, work toward that. That's where you earn points in the larger game, that game one level up, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And another thing that we don't really have time to talk about though is the glitches we've talked about too. Because I
Yes,
think for me
Mandela,
that
that good idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
right. Because
yeah.
that's definitely where it's like, oh, I just experienced a glitch, you know, and also what's it called? There's that thing they call it, the like the Forrest Gump, you know, the line in Forrest Gump that everyone remembers one way and is actually another
Right,
way.
right, right. No, that's Mandela effect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I always
Yes.
forget the names
Yes.
of these things, but yes, that also is like
Yeah.
glitchy stuff. And I feel like I've definitely experienced these glitches where
For
you
sure.
can see outside of time as we know it, you know, or outside of this reality, this box, the blocks you were saying that we're down in, so we don't know that they're just blocks, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
for sure. And I've had so many of them as well. The
right.
Berenstain Bears, I swear that it was Berenstein or whatever, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
There's so many
yeah,
of them. I
yeah.
know, really trips me out. You know, and then those photographs of like time travelers. You know, there's so many different
True.
examples of glitches in the simulation theory too. You know, and actually something else we didn't talk about, which could be a whole nother conversation, is like this idea of time being relative.
Yes, yes.
And which fits in somewhere. Where does time fit in as far as dimensions go?
Well, okay.
Is that too
Again, it comes back to everything exists simultaneously. You know,
right?
all
Right.
time,
Parallel, basically.
all space, you know,
Yeah.
it's all there on the disk with the code in
Yes.
your DNA. It
Yes.
all
Got it. They're
exists.
all like
Yes.
they're all pieces of a game. They're like
Yeah.
puzzle. They're all like
Right.
pieces of the puzzle, and
Right.
it's up to you how you
Right.
kind of put it together.
And
And that's
where you
part of the
navigate in that. Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's part of the right. Yes.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Actually, I kind of did it. We kind of put it all together.
Yeah, we came full circle.
I know, exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Okay, so final words. I'll just say again, this whole idea of this is definitely my work falls in line with my work, which is another way, hashtag another way to be looking at the reality that you're in and know that there is always another way to see it. Whether that reality means a fight with your significant other or a trouble at work, losing your job, being forced to stay at home, you know, or whatever the problems you have in your life, there is always another way to view reality as we know it, you know. And what I love about right now is that like if the whole entire economy fails, which is a very realistic possibility right now,
Yeah.
but all of the economy is just a construct within this concept of reality. It's a simulation. So again, whether you believe it or not, it's just another way to see it. And when you know there's always another way to see it, I think it makes life a little bit easier. So those are my final words. What are your final words, Nikki Johnson?
Yes. So I would go back to probably the same sort of point that I left with the last time as well. I'm totally down with another way. This is just another way of possibly thinking about the nature of reality. It seems completely insane at first. But again, I would just urge people, you know, don't decide right now. Just leave it open and look for, well, okay, let's look for
Right.
evidence one way or the other and see where it stacks up, you know? And sometimes
Yeah.
it's very surprising for these really counterintuitive ideas. So anyway,
Oh my God.
thanks again for having me back.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll do it again for
Cool.
sure. There's so much. We might do hour-long ones, actually. I think that might not be a bad idea. We'll talk about it. But thank you for joining us, all of you out there, and we will see you later. Bye.